Andy Schmidt, Kieran McCowan, and Brian Hitch finish up the Crime Syndicate's first big team-up as the group learns Starro's weaknesses, trying to work together long enough to put a stop to the alien from stepping on their rule of Earth 3. Andy Schmidt again does a great job leaning into the rather humorous nature of Earth 3, as the Metahumans defeat the hero Starro, who, as we learn, was indeed a hero and coming to Earth for help against the Guardians of Oa, a story which I'm sure we'll see somewhere else in the series if it gets a second season or an ongoing or somewhere. Now that I mentioned humour, there definitely is, and the whole issue reminded me of that one SpongeBob and Patrick meme about saving the city, since that is exactly what that whole issue is about, with the introduction of Alexander Luthor, who very much looks like the Luthor seen in Superman and Lois recently, trying to save everything and stop a methed up Ultraman from destroying the city before he can save the people inside, only for Ultraman to then proclaim in the rubble of said city that he saved it. It's totally on brand for the villain, and I enjoyed Andy leaning into that kind of farcical, sort of satirical look at characters like Superman and Batman and all that, while also shoring up another of the characters, this time being Superwoman and her deal as Donna Troy, setting her out in her own origin as the backup, as well as detailing how she learned to use her emotions on others as weapons and bend people to her will, in a quite fantastic warped version of Diana's origin. Kieran McCowan and Brian Hitch continue to both pull art duties and both continue excelling at their jobs here, aiding Andy in telling his origins of a team full of scumbags and violent killers. I really enjoyed Kieran's action set pieces and how gory he could go with them, being that they were exploding aliens all over the world, while Brian Hitch's grand scale artwork was great fit for Superwoman's story, which again was a play on Wonder Woman's classic origins, with that violent Earth 3 twist. Crime Syndicate issue 3 was a great finale for the first half of the villain's team book, leaning into the humour and farcical absurdity nature of this team destroying their own world to deal with just a few aliens. I like the introduction of Alexander Luthor and his quest to try and be a proper hero in a world filled with scumbags and killers, as well as the great expansion on Superwoman's origin and the idea of her greatest weapon being the using of emotions to make people do what she wants. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. Crime Syndicate issue 3 heads to Starro's homeworld as Superwoman says that she has lived for 1,000 years, waging war from Babylon to Olympus and beyond, and nothing has ever stood in her way. That is until Starro, who on his moon is attacked by the Emerald Knights of Oa, who come for him and his people, who fight back, enslaving many of the Emerald Knights and killing a few. Superwoman knows that the Knights have never vanquished the beast before, but she isn't Owen or a weak-willed knight, and the Starros never truly have met their match until now. In Arnold DC, Owlman downloads Emerald Knight's files on the beings, which say there is always a queen, so if they take that down, they win. Johnny Quick says that the Knight killed the big one as Ultraman tells him to gather up the Starros so he can squish them, but the Speedster does it himself, having fun with the killing. Owlman says the Knight killed a big Starro, not the queen, so they need to take the fight to her. Superwoman wonders where she is, as later, after Owlman hands out communicators, the team head to Metropolis, where the Queen is stationed. Ultraman wants to know why they are listening to Owlman when he's around, but Owlman says the Emerald Knight's ring can't break the Queen's hide, so they need to fight smarter, wanting Superwoman to protect the Knight, who tells his ring to shut up as it tells him he's not of any worth to the team. Johnny keeps the ground clear despite not wanting to be a street sweeper as more heroes are taken by the Starros. Atomica speeds towards the giant Starro above, slamming into it like a bullet and entering its bloodstream, as Owlman says Metropolis looks like it decided to get into the fight as Alexander Luthor arrives, telling first responders to evac the people. He tells Ultraman to hold the aliens off, but Ultraman refuses to work with Luthor, throwing him into the giant Starro as Cat Grant covers the battle from the ground, frustrated that she knows that she was wrong about the two men putting aside their differences to save their shared home. Owlman says that when Atomica gives the signal, it's go time, something Ultraman is glad about, activating his kryptonite radiation boost boost, something Emerald Knight finds concerning since he's not in control and looks insane. The giant Starro screams, signaling the team to get to work as Ultraman smashes through the alien, giving Emerald Knight a way to fly into its maw, his ring saying that Starros want to conquer the world and he can either give up or shut up and save the world. He unleashes his green fire, burning the Starro from within, but the hole that Ultraman burst through him heals over, trapping Emerald Knight within. Starro screams for the hero to get out of him, tearing into itself to fling John out of its own body. Owlman knows the Knight detonated the equivalent of a nuke inside Starro, but it only wounded it. The beast blasts Ultraman down onto the ground, taking his, Johnny, and Atomica's mind over. Luther asks Owlman what it's doing to them, but Thomas isn't so sure what it's doing to the metahumans, only that its attack focused on them, which means that they can take down the Queen while it's distracted. Luther wants to evac the people first, but Owlman says that if they don't kill the Queen, the entire planet is going to need evacuating. Superwoman, however, knows what the being is doing, lashing out with its last weapon and exploiting their emotional weaknesses. She flies up towards it, wrapping her barbed wire lasso around the alien as she knows emotions cannot harm her since she can manipulate them and dominate them. The barbed wire lasso wraps around all of the aliens' legs as it pleads with Superwoman to stop hurting them, and they are the last hope to free the galaxy from the overlords of Oa. Donna says that they had their chance and now they just will get in the way, but the Queen says that she came for their help and sought refuge from the Oan murderers and just wants to live. Superwoman says that she has no mercy to give them, pulling the lasso together and slamming the giant alien into the city below, prompting Alexander to tell the people to run, but he needed more time. He learns from news on the TV that the Starros around the world are dying thanks to a group of metahumans. Luther watches on in shock as the news ponders if there could be another wave coming their way and how many metahumans actually exist around the world, and are they now witnessing the birth of a new world order. Atomica meanwhile crawls from the bloody Starro, saying the metahumans all owe her as Ultraman wants praise from Superwoman since he punched a hole in Starro and she only rode the corpse down to the ground. Emerald Knight meanwhile wants to talk to Owlman about how he got into his power battery as Alexander Luthor says the beings could have waited and saved so many more people, knowing even with Ultravision, Ultraman doesn't see them and he doesn't even care about his home. Ultraman says he does care for Metropolis, since after all, that's why he saved it. Decades before, in 1945, Donna Troy trains in the temples of Themyscira, where as the Queen's daughter, she pushes herself to anticipate any strategy, embracing their code of being fearless, relentless, and merciless. Soon, however, a plane crashes near the island and Steve Trevor washes ashore. The charming man says that Donna may be his last hope as he spends some time with Donna on the island, and Donna begins to care for the man as she says that she cannot come with him back to his world, despite Steve saying that she could help win the war for him and his people against the other superpowered enemies they face. Suddenly, Steve grabs her knife, putting it to her throat and saying if she won't help, maybe others on the island will. He takes her hostage, going to see Queen Hippolyta and demanding a way off the island. Hippolyta merely tells him to kill Donna, shocking Steve as she says that she thought her daughter was stronger than this, wanting Donna to save herself. Donna remembers her codes, freeing herself and stabbing Steve in the stomach. Hippolyta asks if she learned anything today, and Donna knows that she was beaten by words and emotions, not a sword or shield, not being able to see his strategy. Hippolyta says that this is her final lesson and the battles take many forms, and now she has taken Steve's weapons as her own, and they are the tools of her trade. Donna sees it now, stepping on Steven's neck and killing him as Hippolyta shows her a scrying pond, which shows her the world's future heroes, as Donna knows that powerful beings are beginning to enter man's world, and she will infiltrate their ranks and get a position of power and forge them into weapons of her own, before one day returning to the island with her army, which she will use to kill her mother and take the throne for herself, and only then maybe Hippolyta will be proud of her.